And we're back. Cutting it down to the wire there, Jonathan.
Just in time,
Just in
like
time.
my compilation of code.
Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, Jonathan definitely cut it down to the wire there. But almost didn't make it back, but we got here. We are ready to do this. So, Jonathan, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing quite well. In case you're wondering why it seems like a nondescript white background, I'm actually in the office today. We hosted the local Tampa OWASP chapter. We had a huge turnout and big success, and everybody learned something new about code security. So, loving it over here. Tristan, how are you, man?
I'm doing really well, aside from the minor heart attack that you just gave me as you ran away while we had to start the show. But we're doing great over here. We got another grit report out this week. So GuidePoint Research and Intelligence team did another great ransomware report. That's up as a blog. You can go check it out on guidepointsecurity.com. Some really great coverage in there, but also a really interesting, there's been a group that's been in the news a lot recently. The last couple of days I've seen a lot, especially because we posted a report on Scattered Spider, which is a ransomware group that is making some waves. So it's been a pretty hectic and busy time over here, but we've also got some great stories to talk about that are neither of those things. So before we dive into those stories, what I'd like to do is just quickly say that the views and opinions expressed by Jonathan and myself are our own. They do not necessarily reflect the official opinions of GuidePoint Security. We're just two dudes talking about the stories that we found and the things that we like. And so with that, Jonathan, do we want to jump directly into our first roundup of major news here?
Yeah, we have a number of things for this GPS Live the week of June 14th, 2024. And so the first story to kind of really get into things is, who remembers how awful the idea of Windows recall is? We talked about it here on the show.
Who could possibly remember how
Yeah, imagine just a screenshot of everything you're doing all day long to be
built-in spyware
and reviewed later by AI. So Microsoft heard the complaints loud and clear. Thank you to everybody who objected online. I would object to this too. But they're taking a moment and they're saying, look, okay, maybe this isn't something we need to roll out right away because of all the security concerns from different professionals and privacy advocates. So you won't be seeing that necessarily for now. It is being put on what we call pause, and I do air quote that because that is coming from Microsoft, but it's okay. Microsoft is still finding ways to slip their Copilot product into our day-to-day lives, if you haven't noticed already. But for now, this is just one small little thing happening over at the Microsoft headquarters, amongst a ton of other things too, right?
Yeah.
Tristan, what else is going on?
Well, really, really quickly, I want to touch a little bit more before we move on to the next thing about recall, because I think it a little bit of the context of what they're doing with the pause kind of will speak to these other stories, right? So with recall, since it was like taking a screenshot of everything, sending it to AI, all of those things that are really terrible, what they have announced as the pause and as the changes, right, are a few things. First, they announced, oh, well, we're going to make it an opt-in feature now instead of an opt-out, which it should have been in the beginning, right? From the beginning, it should have been an opt-in thing. But the problem with that is obviously, right, all that an opt-in really requires is for them to kind of put it behind recommended settings. So when you're doing a Windows update and they say, do you want to do all these yourself, or you just want to click recommended settings, right? So it can just automatically be turned on. You're considered as opted in. But the reason that this was brought up as such a huge concern, right, is because it also was not encrypted. Originally, they've announced that they're going to encrypt all of these files now. But it was brought up as this huge concern because it takes a screenshot of everything for all users, no matter who's logged into the machine. And while this is obviously a huge cybersecurity concern, right? Attackers can obviously get to it. They're now saying that they're going to put it behind a login. That's also a trivial security measure if someone already has access to your machine and they wanted it. But all of these things that they're putting in place really fail to kind of address the overall concern that, like, hey, this is a thing that no one really asked for, and you're enabling it on these machines. Sure, it might be turned off now right at the beginning, but that doesn't stop someone from turning it on later. How do you stop just, nosy family members? Or potentially, something that I saw that was really interesting as a commentary was like, okay, what if someone is in a dangerous relationship with someone who's being very controlling and manipulative, and now they can't even Google like, how do I get out of this, right? All of these concerns, I'm sure at some point had to be thought of by someone, right? They had to be thought of by someone over the last couple of years that this was being developed. And we see this as a trend with corporations and companies, right? With things like, even like Apple's AirTags, right? Someone had to at Apple bring up, hey, isn't it not great that we have a tiny device that could just be slipped into someone's bag and then they're followed forever? Right, like those things are surely brought up, but these ideas still move forward. And the reason I wanted to talk about the things that they're changing that should have been baseline requirements anyway and still aren't enough, it leads into our next story, which is coming to us from NPR about Microsoft. Specifically, you said that you listened to this one this morning, but a whistleblower came forward to talk to ProPublica about Microsoft's internal cybersecurity lapses and the ways that things work there. And the crux of this story really is that this whistleblower, who his name I believe was Andrew Harris, said that when he was a Microsoft employee, he found a critical security weakness in a product that many consumers, including the U.S. government, used to log into their devices, and he reported this weakness to the internal teams. And then he spent the next, I think, 4 years, it said, reporting this over and over again, until finally he got so frustrated that he left his job. And then that same security vulnerability is what kicked off the SolarWinds breaches right away at the beginning of the year, right? So the SolarWinds hack, the biggest hack in U.S. history, was discovered, and the Russian spies had just exploited that same exact flaw he had been talking about. But the important thing about this is that it comes down to the fact that he reported this to Microsoft's internal bureau, or internal teams to resolve the bug, and they essentially put it into a queue that says, like, yeah, we're not going to fix that. Like, that's not a concern for us.
Yeah, the big, there's two things here, and even related to the previous story regarding, recall, is a shrinking of privacy teams and a shrinking of security teams in a lot of these environments. And more specifically, the Microsoft Security Response Center, the MSRC, which this was reported to, was almost in a weird way racing to the bottom. And again, this information is coming to us from the report of these whistleblowers. By no means do we ever want to endorse or speak poorly of any particular business or entity, but according to the article, the idea is, if hundreds, if not thousands, of reports are coming in every single day regarding a security vulnerability, how do you figure out how to prioritize which ones? And it almost turned into this kind of business mindset, which is, if we spend all of our time fixing bugs and dealing with that kind of thing as a problem, we're never really pushing out new features, updates, and upgrades, which is where we make our money. Yeah. And that's what it seems like really got in the way here. And according to the report, is that shift in understanding. And remember, keep in mind that now that this report has come out, Microsoft has not denied anything in the report, right? And I hate to feel like it's one of those situations where I joked earlier, but we all have an opportunity to improve ourselves and learn from this kind of situation. Like, yeah, that's a canned response. And there was indeed, according to this whistleblower, practices that prevented good, proper security from happening, especially with something like you said, the largest hack on the internet, right? And it compromised not just businesses, but the federal government here in the United States too, as kind of a fallout from it. And just to think that this was known and reported and could have been prevented is one of the main reasons they're up in front of, what is it? Who are they speaking to? The president and the CEO are speaking to Congress, or
yeah. So yeah, the president and CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, has taken on has claims to have taken on personal responsibility at Microsoft, right? He will be the senior executive in charge of where kind of the buck stops here, right? For overall accountability for Microsoft security, but importantly, testifying in Congress I love this. This title is amazing. Testifying at the House Committee on Homeland Security hearing, and the hearing itself was titled, quote, "A cascade of security failures, assessing Microsoft Corporation's cybersecurity shortfalls and the implications for Homeland Security." That's a brutal thing to name an official proceeding in Congress. But right, that was let's see, why am I suddenly lost my place here in my my document of all the things that we're talking about. But yeah, this cascade of security failures hearing, right, testimony was put forward there that Microsoft is committing to implementing all 16 recommendations from the Cyber Safety Review Board that they made in a report that I identified this exact problem, right? That Microsoft has been as a kind of as a corporate culture, right, deprioritizing enterprise security investments and rigorous risk management. So shrinking those teams down, and like the whistleblower had called out, right, trying to get to will not fix is specifically what this whistleblower called out. Is that like the policy is we have so many bugs being reported to us so constantly that the fastest and most efficient way to work with those is to say, well, find the reason why we won't fix it instead of find how we can fix it, like you said, because if you're not shipping new product and shipping new updates, right, and things like bonuses are tied to bonuses and compensation are tied to shipping products regularly, right, it just deprioritizes security as a whole. And that's really what this hearing was about in Congress too, was saying, like, why is the corporate culture, not only for Microsoft, I think it's important to point out, but for so many companies, right, so focused on just the constant churn of new that they're completely ignoring the fact that that newness has to come with security built in.
Yeah, this is something that anybody who has internal developers, develops their own applications, or is responsible from a product perspective to really consider where's that happy balance between business and productivity and making sure that security is not just received, but also applied effectively. And you may find yourself in a scenario where you maybe recently opened up a bug bounty program and you're inundated, right? And suddenly your developers have to refocus their efforts from shipping the newest feature to compete with a competitor that needs to come out this quarter to stay, relevant in the market, to patching all these bugs. And then the question really comes down to is then it's a lot of risk, right? Does the business accept the risk? What happens if we do get compromised, or if our product causes other people to be compromised, and are we responsible in that role? And what is our responsibility as an organization to, quote unquote, take security seriously? And it seems like this was one of those scenarios where it was such a small team with such a vast number of incidents coming in, and so much that, like you said, you have to reprioritize your thinking from how many of these can we get fixed to how many of these can we consider do not fix, or that we can ignore.
Right.
And it's almost really disheartening to hear it from that perspective, but also from a business point of view. This is a challenge, and this is a conversation that needs to be had at every level in every organization, not just Microsoft, but Apple, Google, and anything in between.
It actually
to really kind of noodle on.
It's interesting, kind of from a historical perspective, right, to look at like the repeating wheel of history, right? Linking, like my brain immediately links this back to stories of auto manufacturers, right, as cars became the most commonplace thing in the world, and like doing the math on, well, there's an issue that could cause the car to catch on fire, but how likely is it that cars will catch on fire, and is the payout that we'd have from lawsuits less than the payout of doing a full recall, right? Like this kind of like mental math, or not mental math, but this kind of business math that goes on to say, like, is it more costly to fix the product or to fix the problem, or to just kind of deal onesie twosie with the fallout of the problem as it goes on? And the solution in that case as well was
To
government
allow
oversight.
it.
It was
Yeah.
Congress taking action to say, like, actually, no, all cars have to come with seatbelts now, right?
Yeah, you can't just accept the risk and see what happens.
Yeah,
Your customers are not part of your testing phase, and
and
so yeah, keep an eye on the news, right? Because Microsoft is going to be talking to Congress, and they're going to be partnering, not just them, but several organizations are really coming forward to say, look, government security at large, healthcare security at large. We realize there's a lot going on. These sectors are being attacked. We, are an integral component of the day-to-day operations in many of these businesses and federal entities, and therefore we need to step up the responsibility. And so, I'm hoping for a little bit of a ray of sunshine to come out of the other side of this,
well, there already
because
is
yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit, right? There already is, because I do want to call out that Microsoft also did, state in their testimony, and Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft, attested to the fact that they're pursuing new strategies. They have the Microsoft Secure Future Initiative, which is adding 18 concrete security objectives, dedicating the equivalent of 34,000 full-time engineers to the largest cybersecurity engineering project in the history of digital technology. That language is interesting to me. The idea of the equivalent of 34,000 full-time engineers, right? I want to know what that means.
What's the other part of the article? And you'll mention this at the end, that they're changing their focus onto, right?
Right. But they also said 1,600 more security engineers this fiscal year will be
That's a good
added.
number.
It's a good number.
Yeah.
So, and 800 more security positions. So, like, they're moving in the direction that they need to, and that is great. But overall, right, leveraging these stories as kind of a lens to look at cybersecurity and supply chain, right, through these to look at and say, like, hey, there needs to be a giant culture shift for all companies.
Yeah. And the reality at the end of this is without saying buzzwords, but AI is going to play a major role in this process.
Yeah.
Right. So those kind of estimations are also going to say that, implementing secure AI and allowing AI to participate in the conversation, or at least provide feedback, maybe even a little triage, we're going to start to see some of that to complement the human workforce that's being increased here. Man, 1,600 security, that's huge.
That's huge. But we've already spent so much time just on these three Microsoft stories. We've got some more to cover, but luckily they're both a little bit smaller to move into, and both of them come to us as the source, or not the source, but the first article that we saw was from the top level source was Dark Reading for both of the next stories. We just want to call that out. So Dark Reading had an article that piqued my interest. That the claiming that the number of cyber insurance claims has now reached new heights, and it's a very short article on Dark Reading that's just calling out a report that was released by the insurance broker Marsh. And so we went and found that report, and producer Ben's got both those, and they'll throw them in the comments. But this report from the insurance broker Marsh is titled "Ransomware: A Persistent Challenge in Cyber Insurance Claims," and this is really interesting because this is something that Grit deals with a lot. The Guidepoint Research and Intelligence team, when they're looking through what's happening in ransomware month to month, and then quarter to quarter, and then on an annual basis as well, right? This takeaway of like, yep, cyber insurance claims, the payouts for these things are getting so much higher. Ransomware, the cost of a ransomware incident is increasing dramatically, which means that the number of insurance, or not the amount of insurance claims that they have to pay out, is going to be increasing. But what this report specifically is calling out is that just the volume, the number of claims, is also going through the roof.
Yeah, one of the things you want to keep in mind here is that having a cyber policy may be stressed to you, maybe considered important, but according to the report, 21% of Marsh's customers have purchased a cyber policy in the 2023 year, and they're seeing this kind of consistent growth over the past 5 years. And on top of that fact, within that, ransomware represents less than 20% of the claims reported, but it's still a top concern. And so we're seeing from both directions, more people signing on to the idea of having cyber insurance and having some kind of policy to abide by it. And furthermore, not just that growth, but the growth of claims being cyber insurance related versus any other type of claim, right? And that can be bundled in with everything from property insurance, business, and all kinds of other related things. And so for 1/5 of insurance claims to be cyber related today, it's growing market, and that just goes to show, one, that businesses are taking it seriously and adopting these kinds of policies, and two, they are either dealing with an incident or they're realizing that this is the kind of thing that they need to get involved with to help resolve when something kind of spurs up like this.
Yeah, and I want to clarify. So Marsh's report was based on over an analysis of over 1,800 cyber claims that were submitted to them. And like you said, right, 21% of people who bought cyber insurance, or 21% of clients that purchased a cyber insurance policy, reported an event in 2023, which is that's a huge number of people, coming through with claims that need to be compensated, right? These are not just like, oh, the network went down for a day. Like we had like these small things. Like these are claims that required compensation through the insurance policy in order to keep the business running and get things back to normal. But they also specifically call out, going back to large supply chain issues and cyber incidents and security flaws built into products, right? That in 2023, a lot of the events that wwere reported and a lot of the incidents that were reported were driven by factors like move it, right? Like that played a huge role across 2023 of the number of attacks that were being perpetrated, because that was something that one group found a security flaw and then they're like, we're just going to sit on this until we can conduct a widespread attack. And then also the increased sophistication of cyber attacks is something that they called out, right? So like we said, it's not just like, oh, some of my machines are down, or like we had some like small problems, someone, business email compromise, like we took care of it. It's not these things that are like small and isolated. It's widespread incidents that are highly sophisticated, and that's driving this upward tick in cyber insurance claims.
Yeah. Now, the people that are making these claims is going to be your usual suspects. If you guessed healthcare, communications, retail, wholesale, financial, and finally education, those do round out the top 5 in this report. And I feel like those are the same top 5 in every vertical of something weird happening right now. But we've seen a lot in healthcare, especially between different compromises and breaches across the world. One of the other bits of advice, and this, my personal favorite bit of advice that we kind of were able to pull out of this report, is that it's always important, and I cannot stress this enough, to follow the proper procedures, right? And if the procedures of your insurance claim require notifying insurers, brokers, and other stakeholders, you have to do that. You have to follow along, and you have to maintain proper documentation. This is what's going to help you be able to file a successful claim should an incident arise. And again, I can't stress that enough, that there are very specific bumper rails on your bowling lane for this, and you have to stay within the lane, and you have to follow the steps that you agreed to when you sign up for these policies. And so everybody should be able to review what your cyber insurance policy is, understand the steps that are required, what you need to have ready to go, who you need to contact, and that's going to make things go a lot smoother during the time of an incident.
Yeah, and it's I think the kind of like an umbrella that goes across all of that. I mean, across all incidents, right? And but like over cyber insurance claims and everything, right? Is just your overall organization's cyber resilience policy, right? Like what are the plans and procedures that you have in place internally as an organization, so that when something does happen, you don't have to scramble, right? It's everyone knows where is the file that says call this person, do XYZ, and being able to partner with or work with, like, if you have the ability to have a retainer for cyber incident response and data forensics and like all of these things, so that you can really, it's kind of like a pick up the phone and call to make sure that like, oh, we have a thing that's going on, we're going to go ahead and talk to the people who know best. right? It's so important to have that in place, and because that number is going up constantly, right? Not just the amount that it costs to recover from an incident, but the likelihood that an incident will occur that will require you to reach out to outside organizations in order to get yourself back up and running. But we've got one more story that we want to go through in the last 5 minutes. It's a short one, but we did have a big focus, I think, a lot on talking about AI. We're gonna button it. We're gonna kind of bookend the episode with both of these, right? And that's the fact that CISA has put out an official warning talking about a new vishing scam, right? So, new voice phishing scam where people are calling and pretending to be CISA agents and asking for payment for different things. So CISA put out an official report, or not official report, but an official warning. It's one paragraph long, right? Talking about impersonation scams are on the rise and just saying like, hey, we will never call you asking for money. So don't pay out someone who does. But the reason that this story caught my eye in particular is the fact that I've noticed a trend recently in reporting of new phishing, vishing, and other types of impersonation scams that are ongoing and that are kind of on the rise and increase. And I don't think you have to be like a rocket scientist, right, to like put together that the proliferation of large language models and AI and the capabilities of it are allowing this to be commoditized as a scam.
Yeah, now we definitely covered this kind of stuff on the show before. For instance, when we talked about how new smishing or SMS phishing is happening, where they're using native platforms like iMessage and RCS. But yes, the ability to generate AI-based voices or to use AI to help craft messages in more of a native speak rather than book speak of a particular language. That used to be the old way of determining whether or not a phishing scam was legitimate or not, because you would say, well, that's not how we, would speak in our language or talk socially.
Right.
But now it's becoming much more difficult. And obviously with AI becoming more accessible at the free tier, there's going to be a lot more players jumping on, not just at the nation state, but the average person trying to just cash in. So whether it is CISA calling you, or Amazon, or Microsoft, or any of the other manufacturers, just please keep in mind to share this message with your community, that these kind of things exist, and to be very wary and to not necessarily share your information over the phone, especially if somebody is demanding this kind of payment or gift cards or any of those other types of things.
I'm chuckling over here because ChatGPT, right? The OpenAI's recent thing in their announcement with ChatGPT 4.0.
What, in your iPhone? Ugh.
Well, no, but I'm chuckling because I suddenly had the image of someone picking up the phone and Scarlett Johansson saying she's from CISA and asking you to pay her in Target gift cards. Right? This is just a very funny mental image to me. But that brings us to the end of the show. That brings all of our coverage up. So again, this week, great. A lot of kind of roundup of not only AI based kind of concerns and threats, but Microsoft's testimony to Congress, the vishing scams that are getting bolder and bolder by the day, bolstered by AI, and also just the volume of cyber insurance reports being on the rise. Thank you so much for joining us for GPS Live for the week of June 14th. We will catch you again next week. We'll be back at the same time to talk about some more stories. But until then, I have been and will continue to be Tristan Morris.
And I am Jonathan Singer.
And we will see you all next time.
See you.